Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is May 29th, 2024, and I am so happy that you are all joining me here today. Because you are obviously going online to listen to my podcast, you spend time on the internet. And anyone who does that needs to be aware of the security risks that come along with using the latest technologies. And our guest today has a wealth of knowledge to help you to combat the things that you could be encountering when you are online. And not just that, with the coming elections in the United States, and whenever people have to deal with elections in whatever country that they're in, there are risks that people should be looking at and making sure that what they're reading, what they are seeing online is actual vetted information and not deep fakes or misinformation campaigns. That's why today's guest is so important. And today's show is going to be a little bit longer than normal because I just could not bring myself to cut anything out. There's so much information in here that is vital to everyone who spends any time online. If you have an email account, if you buy things online, whatever you do, you need to listen to this episode. So without any further blather from me, please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, Theresa Payton. The way that I always like to start out every one of the interviews is I just have my guest tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me on. I'm Theresa Payton, and I currently run a cybersecurity and intelligence operations company called Fortalice Solutions. Prior to that, I was the first female chief information officer for the United States White House. I worked for President George W. Bush for 2.5 years, 2006 to 2008. And prior to that, I spent 16 years working as a technology executive in the financial services industry.
You just have such an incredible history. And besides being an entrepreneur, you've also been on the TV show Hunted as one of the investigators, and you're also a published author.
Yes. Hunted was one of those things that was just a fabulous experience. I got the chance to work with people I know and brand new people I didn't know who are now great friends. And it really aligns with what I believe I'm being called to do with the rest of my career, which is evangelizing and warning people about here are all the wonderful things technology can do for us. But when technology is misused, here are the dangers to our privacy, our security, our safety. And in some cases, the studies are showing mental wellness. So to me, I'm taking the gifts that I've been given and the blessings that I've been given, and I do feel called and led to be helping people thrive, survive, be safe in this digital age that we live in. And Hunted was a great way to showcase that in an entertaining, but maybe also a little bit of enraging, like, wait a minute, that happens way. And the same thing with the books. I wanted to write the books for non-technical people, really unpacking why the technology is great and how it can help us, but in the wrong hands, how it can hurt us.
We know, and that was one reason why when your publicist approached me and said, would you like to have her as a guest? I'm like, oh my God, yes. It's like, who do I have to pay off to make this happen? Because your book and your information is so incredibly timely, especially right now with everything going on in the world, with the advancement of AI technology, with the questions that so many governments are starting to have about TikTok, and with the coming US election. I mean, there are so many things that people need to be looking at right now. And your information can help them to critically scrutinize these things and make a plan for how to behave with them.
Yeah, that is absolutely my goal, because I don't know about you. I know that Superman is not coming to save us on this issue. And global governments are woefully behind in addressing all of the nuances that come in this digital age, our protection of our identities, our protection of our digital tracks and digital behaviors, our protection of how will data aggregators use our data, but more importantly, how does that end up in the hands of bad people who are pretending to be us and applying for credit in our names?
Mm.
So you put all of this together, and I just wanted to, in an entertaining, approachable way, get this information in front of people to say, hey, look, hopefully one day the laws will catch up. But until they do, we all have to look out for each other. I am my brother and sister's keeper. And the only way we do that is to be educated, informed. And then also, very importantly, I hope that what people walk away with after they read the book is the best way to approach somebody who has been manipulated into believing disinformation and misinformation is to give them love and space and grace and understanding and spend the time having conversations with them, maybe give them a copy of the book, but find different ways to meet them where they are, gently take them by the hand and bring them to the truth. It breaks my heart to hear how many people have said, I've had to cut that friendship out of my life. I have to cut that person out of my life. And I'd say, why? What happened? And they'd say, well, they have gone off the deep end. They believe this particular thing. They believe that particular thing. They're voting for this person. They're voting for, and that breaks my heart. We should be able to agree to disagree. We should be able to have even very spirited arguments on all social issues, but still be able to shake hands and have a beer or a root beer, whatever your preference is, in the end of the day. And the manipulators basically are taking advantage of technology to make us not even speak to each other.
Yeah, I have some personal experience with both sides of that. I have some friends and family who have absolutely polar opposite beliefs, and we still get along. It's not a problem. And then I have others that we have those polar opposite beliefs and cannot have a conversation at all. It's really amazing how it does take two people to agree or disagree and to be able to want to have a relationship no matter what your beliefs are.
Yes, I grew up in a household where disagreement was actually encouraged. It was almost a sport in our extended family who would bring a topic that would get everybody energized and maybe voices raising on particular issues. But at the end of the day, we all loved each other and we liked each other. And there's no way to expand your level of thinking and take your life experiences to another level if you only hang out with people who think and act and react the same way you do. That makes life fairly boring in my mind. Yeah. And so I like to be around people who, whether it's a policy on socioeconomic issues, whether it's different belief systems, faith systems, I love to encounter people from all different walks of life and thoughts on life, because I walk away smarter and my life is richer because of them.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to introduce your book. You just put out a new edition of your book, Manipulated: Inside the Cyberwar to Hijack Elections and Distort the Truth. One of the things that I did want to ask, what exactly does cybersecurity entail? Because I don't think a lot of people really understand what this all encompasses.
Yes, I appreciate you saying that, because it is such a broad term to say cybersecurity, and it means so many different things to other people. At a very basic level, people may kind of conjure up images of, oh, cybersecurity. There's people that protect my passwords. Obviously, we're not doing a good job of that lately because passwords seem to be everywhere. You get the alerts like I do saying your password has been found here. They're protecting data, protecting systems. But the tactics of cyber criminals have changed so much, Dianne, that you can't purely rely on antivirus, anti-malware, firewalls, and sort of offensive and defensive cybersecurity systems. You really have to see what the criminals do with the digital age, and they're all about social engineering. This is where manipulation campaigns can actually come to play, because it's not just about picking winners and losers in elections or getting people to argue with each other, but it can also be used to drive traffic and drive behaviors a certain way to then commit potential cybercrimes. So cybersecurity is a very broad profession, and there's a lot of different skill sets that are needed to have a really effective cybersecurity protection program. And manipulators fall into sort of an interesting bucket, if you will, of different types of cyber criminals. But there is no doubt in my mind that manipulation techniques, in some regard, there is nefarious intent. Whether or not there's laws on the books you can try them against, that's a whole nother question, Dianne.
So, going into this next election, is there anything that the general public can do to help ensure that the election is fair and honest?
I think that the best thing we can all do for each other is when you see something that gives you an extreme emotional reaction, either this makes you very happy or it makes you very sad, or you kind of have this, I knew it all along. I knew this fact all along and nobody believed me. And aha, here it is. What I would ask everybody to do is just take a moment, maybe inhale, exhale, and then pick out 3 different trusted, vetted news media sources. And I always say, pick out a local one, pick out a national one, depending on the country you live in, and then pick out an international one that is not the country you live in. And the reason why I say that is, I find it fascinating to see how other countries view America and how America views other countries and their politics. And you're going to get a much more balanced approach to whatever that issue is that you had an emotional reaction to. That can be the best way to avoid being manipulated into thinking your vote doesn't matter, or that you must vote this way, or things are not going to work out for whatever your particular issues are that are important to you. So that can be a great way to sort of keep yourself grounded and centered. Now, as it relates to other people, your family, your colleagues, your friends, what I would just say is, again, grace, space, and love and understanding is really the best way to approach somebody who might be going down a rabbit hole on an issue because they've fallen prey to disinformation and misinformation campaigns. I would say to all elected officials and media who have a role to play in this, there's some interesting examples of best practices that I found in doing the research to update the book. And I love what Taiwan is doing. Dianne, I don't know when you were reading the book if you came across this, but I found out about this from a professor that I met while I was at Scripps College speaking to their executive series. And he talked about humor, not rumor. And what the government did was when a rumor would be circulating on any social issue, it didn't have to necessarily be about elections. They paid popular comedians to do humor about the rumor and then guide people back to the truth.
I love that.
I mean, we all need to laugh more, don't we, Dianne?
Oh, definitely.
So I love that. And then Finland, they actually have a digital literacy program from children of preschool age all the way through school. And they even have courses on how to spot misinformation, disinformation, and deep fakes that appear to look like they're coming from the news media, but they're not. And I think things like that can be a great way to just have a more informed public, but also give people that grace and space that I mentioned.
Well, and plus, as technology invades our lives more and more, people are going to need that kind of information.
They are. And the other thing I would say as well, so here's an example. I think about Princess Kate and how bravely she announced to the world that she is battling cancer. And she thought about all other people that are battling cancer, and she explained her absence on things. And then the internet has to get involved. And suddenly people decided, because they've seen that sweater before, and she's a princess, and I guess she's not expected to wear the same sweater again. I don't know, Dianne, but they said it must be a deep fake. It's not really her. It's been manufactured. Where is she really? And what they didn't realize is in doing that, you're actually causing more harm than good. And what I would say to everybody is when you look out there and you see something trending that, this is a deep fake or things like that, I want to point everybody to a free tool. And it's not going to be perfect and it's not going to spot all deep fakes. But I actually ran Princess Kate in her sweater through the deep fake tool because I just thought we're reaching a whole level of this is a problem. And this tool is called scanner.deepware.ai. And like I said, it's not perfect, but if you're starting to see something, you can go to this free tool and see whether or not for yourself it might be a deep fake. And it just takes less than a few moments to put a URL in it, or you can grab the picture, grab the video, and upload it if you want to. And I think we just all have to equip ourselves with these different strategies that are super simple, super easy. And again, going back to those trusted embedded news sources and picking 3 is going to make a huge difference.
And I don't think the average person really understands how easy it is to manipulate images and video, because back when I first started into college and started learning how to use Photoshop, I was taking pictures of people in my office and taking guys that I was working with and making them pregnant with, evening gowns and doing all of these things just to learn how to use the program. And I would print these pictures out and give them to them, and they were so shocked that it looked like just a photo of them, but it was completely manufactured.
And think about how far we've come with the technology.
Oh, yeah, because that was good 20 years ago.
Yes. The cost to do deep fake imagery, whether it's video, photograph, creating documents, as well as deep fake audio, there are tools out there. They're free. You don't need a sophisticated computer. A lot of times, one pass through the free tool is enough to have a very convincing sounding audio. And you can make somebody with 30 seconds of their voice, you can make somebody say something they never said before. Mm-hmm. I actually did a demonstration for the fraud industry yesterday, Dianne, where I showed them I used a free tool. I used a copy of a recording of me just doing a dry run of reading a script for something. And the audio fidelity of the recording is really poor. It almost sounds like I was talking on a record, like a vinyl record.
Yeah.
And for anybody under the age of 25, you can look that up on Wikipedia. So I played that for them. And then I played one pass through a free tool. I wrote a script, and they said that the scripted deepfake audio sounded more like me than the copy of a copy.
Wow. That's frightening.
Isn't that something?
That's really unnerving.
Yes. And the longer the recording got on the deepfake audio, it started to get slightly robotic at the end. Mm-hmm. But it did definitely, the first couple of sentences sounded like me. And it had the same cadence and approach to speaking that I do.
Wow. Whenever you consider all of these new technologies that are coming out to do things like that, what do you think right now is the most important threat in cybersecurity that impacts American citizens?
Well, besides these disinformation and misinformation campaigns, the ability for this technology to be used to commit fraud. So we have a whole level of different crimes we see being committed against victims. So for example, using deepfake audio to make it sound like your loved one is kidnapped and playing them saying different scripts, playing over the phone, changing in real time what they're saying to respond to the family member who thinks the person has been kidnapped. And you can do this in nearly real time. So that crime is called virtual kidnapping, and it's to get somebody to quickly wire funds. So what I tell people to combat against this deep fake virtual kidnapping is rehearse as a family a passphrase that is not easily guessed by looking on social media. And so you could say, I'm sorry, sweetheart, I'm going to send the money. But before I do, we've got that family virtual passphrase. what is it, sweetheart?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to know it.
Yeah.
And so that's going to help you kind of get your wits about you so you don't fall prey, because they study human nature. As a matter of fact, criminals could teach a master class in human behavior, Diane. Like they
Oh,
know
yeah.
us better than we know ourselves. And so that's one strategy I want people to be thinking about on how to combat something like that. Some of the other things that we are seeing, there was an individual who wire transferred a significant sum of money. And part of the company's protocol before they do a wire transfer is the authorized parties get on a video conference to authorize the large wire transfer. And he got on a video conference with what he thought were his real authorized parties, hangs up, does the wire transfer. Diane, he was the only human. The rest were deep fake videos.
Oh, wow.
So again, there are wonderful things about this technology. But from a cybersecurity perspective, I am seeing the cost of entry for criminals to go way down, and their ability to perpetrate crime, fraud, all different types of extortion schemes, ransomware schemes, convincing people to click on links, open attachments that normally wouldn't do that. And so we all just need to take a deep breath and think about, okay, well, if they are studying me and they're taking advantage of our processes and human behavior, how do I take a moment and outthink, outsmart, and outdesign them? So we have to be thinking about creative strategies that they'll never see coming. That's where that passphrase can be so helpful. That's where doing something a little out of the ordinary that everybody else doesn't do for wire transfer protocols can be the difference between falling prey to something like that situation I shared with you, or not falling prey to it because you're doing something a little out of the ordinary that criminals wouldn't know about.
Mm-hmm. With all of your experience working with different government agencies, are they able to keep ahead of the new inventions for cyber attacks? How hard is it to stay ahead of this stuff?
It's incredibly difficult, Diane. And I'm so glad you asked this question, because you have a couple of things that make it very challenging. For starters, the laws on the books have not kept up.
Yeah.
And then you also don't have a lot of case law precedent either, because even if you get attribution, so you have a victim, you do an investigation, you do as much as you can to get them back on the right path with their life and maybe get them some compensation for the damages that they've experienced. But then you do attribution and you realize not all cyber criminals are in the United States. In fact, they're in many other countries who we have no extradition policies with.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not going to be a court trial, which means there's no case precedent. So you end up having this situation where the laws haven't kept up, you don't have case precedent, and so it just continues. It makes it very challenging when what law are you enforcing to keep up with all the changes in technology? So then you take these departments and agencies and law enforcement organizations, and they all have different missions and purposes. So, for example, the Department of Justice is to basically seek criminal charges and seek justice through the court system. You have Department of Homeland Security. They're to create sort of defense in depth for departments and agencies and critical infrastructure. So they're not actually going after the criminals. So you have different groups, but you don't have the things on the books. So even if they are up to date on the latest and greatest, what do they do with that?
I know that is one of the challenges right now with a lot of the AI technology and copyright issues. I remember hearing not too long ago that, I can't remember, I think it was the Washington Post maybe, who was filing a lawsuit about copyright infringement because of the internet scraping to help train AI. And I don't think that there has been any other court precedent to help create laws about the copyright infringement going on whenever AI uses all of the data online to learn from. How
Right.
can we protect, especially for people like us who are authors, how do we protect our work that is online from being used to train AI?
I'm so glad you asked this question. And if you recall, when the Hollywood Actors Guild, SAG, went on strike, one of the things that they were striking on was the ability of studios to use an actor or actress's likeness with AI without paying them for their likeness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the creative license? And I told people at the time, I know you're going to be subjected to reruns and movie delays, but they're doing actually all of us a favor
Mm-hmm.
because somebody needed to speak out and say, wait a minute, I've got some real concerns here. You did a lousy job protecting my identity. And now my intellectual property, my likeness, my talent, my written work, my voice, whatever it is that is what is unique to you and makes you employable and earn a living for yourself and your family, now could be in the public domain and used to train tools and used to produce new things. We have a problem with that. Look at musicians.
Mm-hmm.
What constitutes, if you're using AI to create music, where did the AI get the music from? Other music?
Yeah.
Think, right? And so we're in this brave new world where it can be a force multiplier effect to have access to generative AI. But at the same time, we definitely have not figured out how do we protect our crown jewels, our intellectual property. My other concern too, Dianne, is so there's the downside of how do we protect people's intellectual property with this screen scraping. But we just talked about how some of the internet is actually a dumpster fire. So these tools, they're not just scraping up the great work you've done, Dianne. They're also scraping up the dumpster fire that is the internet. And then that's in there too. And so when you ask for an answer to something or you're asking for generative AI to help you create something, it also is diving into the resources of the dumpster fire. That's problematic for me.
Yeah.
Who is the arbiter making a decision that this is Dianne's work, and if we're going to leverage it, we must cite sources and attribute it to Dianne? Who is the arbiter when the algorithm runs against the dumpster fire of the internet to ensure that what is presented to the user is either legitimate and vetted and trusted information, or is actually flagged with a warning that says, you should probably do your homework and check this. I'm just giving you what I found. Who is the arbiter of that? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a very high wall to get over to try and protect from all of these new things that are coming up, because as they create new technologies, we have to figure out new protections, and we're always like a step behind on that.
Yes. And that's where our lawmakers could really be helpful if they would create dynamic, expandable frameworks that it's not technology dependent. It's more focused on an individual right to privacy. GDPR was a good start. I think we have to have more substantive conversations in other countries and including in the EU around, as technology changes, what constitutes privacy, what constitutes opting in, opting out. Do we have an opportunity, if you're going to collect my digital behaviors and you're going to, quote, anonymize it, but turn around and sell it for ad revenue, but that was my behavior that you're making money off of, do I get a piece of the action too? Could we actually monetize our digital tracks and be paid some type of a royalty for I interacted with your platform, you're making money off of me, I'd like a piece of the action. So we have to do more with these laws to make them dynamic and less about a technology platform itself or a type of technology, but more around the individual and an individual's right to privacy and creating those guardrails for all technology companies to protect our rights. Additionally, we don't have enough on the books to help victims. So when victims, You're a victim of wire transfer fraud. You're a victim of a sextortion scheme. You're a victim of someone takes your likeness and puts it without your permission onto pornographic videos, creating deepfake pornography. We don't have enough compensation and assistance and support set up for victims of these crimes. Everybody, it's like fend for yourself. So more work has to be done. And I know we can do better. And I know we can actually use this technology as a force for good to prevent more victims from being victims, but also support and protect victims after they've experienced a cybercrime.
See, and that actually brings up a really good question that I've had about TikTok, because there's starting to be all of this discussion about governments, especially like the United States, talking about banning TikTok use in the United States. And even in the EU, people have talked about at least a partial ban. And I'm not sure how they plan on going about that. But what kind of security issue does something like TikTok present to the general public?
This is a very interesting conversation, especially at this juncture. So when the Trump administration first brought up national security concerns about TikTok, because the parent company ByteDance is headquartered in China, TikTok in the United States said, "We hear you. What we're going to do is set up a relationship with Oracle." Oracle is a United States headquartered company.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to change our enterprise architecture so that the data for Americans will reside on the Oracle platform. And they spent, I'm just going to guess, I have no knowledge of what they spent, but I'm going to guess based on my previous experience in doing big technology projects, probably hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm going to guess. And they thought they were doing everything they were asked to do. And so this new bill, which could impact any technology platform, it just so happens TikTok is first in line, basically says if there's foreign influence or access, it gives it grounds for banning if it's not divested of. But I guess what I find the most puzzling about where we are right now, Dianne, is the bill got signed into law. I believe it does give a longer time frame for divestiture versus being banned. But my question is did we conduct an on-site inspection, which we have protocol and precedent for? And did TikTok fail, or are we just assuming that the Chinese government has access? And my other thing that I find puzzling is I heard that there was a question asked of President Biden's administration, his campaign. They have a campaign running on TikTok, and they asked them if this meant that they were going to stop using TikTok, and they said no.
Interesting.
So if that is to be the case, I'm a little confused as to what the national security issue is at this point in time. My recommendation, if I were advising TikTok, I would hire a third-party audit firm that has a globally recognized name, and I would put the bill and say, audit us as if you were presenting this to the US government. Tell us where we need to do better and present those findings to the United States government. If I were advising TikTok, that's what I would do, because where we are right now, I find puzzling. And so maybe they were inspected and we just don't have access to that data, Dianne. But that's what I would recommend they do. I also think about in this ban, there are many small businesses and individuals who their financial success and livelihood depends heavily on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
My heart goes out to them, because how do they rebuild their business and their brand if TikTok goes dark?
I know a lot of indie authors who their livelihood basically it's dependent on their platform on TikTok. And I kind of wonder if there is a ban in the United States, if there isn't going to be some kind of class action lawsuit, because basically the government will be effectively shutting down thousands of American industries, people's entrepreneurship, their home businesses that are paying their bills.
Yeah, this is fairly unprecedented. Yeah, I think about them, Diane, and I think, my goodness, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
How are they going to provide for themselves and their family? Not only is it going to be challenging to find an organization or group of people who can afford, okay, let's assume for a minute, ByteDance says they're not selling TikTok, but
Hmm.
let's just assume for a moment that they said, sure, but it's got to go for market value. Most of the companies that could afford to buy TikTok, there would probably be antitrust issues because of the size
Hmm.
of the market dominance that would be created. So the idea that you've got this clock with an expiration date for them to divest or it's going to go dark, like you said, multiply that for individual creators, independent workers, but also businesses. And I don't know how they figure out how to replace that income. And I agree with you. I believe, and again, I have no knowledge of this, TikTok, based on their initial position saying we're not divesting, sounds to me like they may bring a lawsuit
Hmm.
and challenge that they don't fall under that law. And I believe that there is the potential, now that you say it, Diane, I think you're onto something there. There could be a class action lawsuit because you're basically inhibiting the ability to make money. You're actually stopping commerce.
Hmm. And for a capitalist society, that is an important thing.
It is. And, we do have precedent saying we no longer are going to allow this company to sell this technology to America or to the US departments and agencies. So, for example, people may recall a lot of conversation about Huawei. And the US government made the determination that they did not want to have Huawei componentry installed in the US departments and agencies.
Hmm.
So we do have a precedent where the government says we have national security concerns. And so this is in the best interest of the United States of America. But I don't recall ever banning a platform before.
And a platform that's going to impact the livelihood of Americans. I mean, because with the Huawei, I mean, they were keeping it out of government agencies, but there weren't thousands of American families depending on that sale to support their families.
I agree. And these are very energizing times with technology and the access to technology and what it can do to improve and enhance our lives. But it's also very challenging because we don't really understand all the nuances of how to regulate it, set up guardrails,
Hmm.
ensure national security, ensure individual rights to privacy, ensure freedom of speech. We're figuring all this out as we go. And what I would say is we're probably going to make a lot of mistakes in the process.
But that is why books like Manipulated is so important for the general public to pick up and read so that they will better understand what we're walking into with these technologies.
I appreciate you saying that, Diane. You know what I tell people is read it for yourself and then read it to help others and pass the book on, pass it forward. And I'm always available if people want to have a conversation about what they read in the book and then what they're seeing live in front of them on social media or in the news. I am on Instagram. I am on X. I am on LinkedIn. And I decided because TikTok was banned, I opened up an account on TikTok yesterday.
Oh, nice.
So
Now,
you'll be able to reach me there as well.
that's great. Yeah, I have to admit, it's like I have fun on TikTok. I do Manic Monday reviews
I love it.
because my Mondays are usually very hectic. So that's what I do to de stress at the end of the day and just kind of tell everybody why I was so manic all day long. So now is a perfect time to do our 5 quick question segment that never turns out to be quick, but it's a great way for people to engage with you just as a human being. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, question 1. Who was your favorite person that you got to meet while you were working in the White House?
Wow. So many favorite people. I mean, obviously, President George W. Bush, and he is just an incredibly hardworking, smart, funny person. Gosh, there's so many, but I will say the one that I looked forward to bumping into in the hallways frequently was actually Mr. Karl Rove. And I know the media portrays him as one way, but I would bump into him in the mornings, really early in the morning. I'd go into the White House mess with one of my bosses and colleagues, Dr. Sandy Evans, and he would be in there with a stack of newspapers, reading through the newspapers. He knew everybody's name at the White House, whether they were taking out the garbage, bringing in linens. He knew their name. He knew their families. He knew their dogs' names, their cats' names. Always had a smile, always had a good morning, always had a kind word to say to everybody. And I thought about how hard his job was and how jovial he was. He was very serious about his work and very diligent and worked very hard. But he always was quick to have a smile, a joke, and remembered everybody. And that just really struck me because I thought, you know what? I could spend time being kinder, being more present, being more focused on other people. So Karl Rove, but I have so many favorite people, really everybody from the career employees that work there through multiple presidential administrations are all terrific people. And there were so many wonderful people that I work with on the staff. It's hard to pick just one, but if I had to pick one, it's Mr. Karl Rove.
I always think that it really tells you something about somebody in a position of power when they know the people who empty the trash cans and bring in the donuts and make the coffee. If they know those people and they say hello to them, that says a lot about the kind of person that they are.
Yeah. And a quick funny story, he had a book signing multiple years ago in Charlotte. And I told my mom and dad, I'm like, I want to make sure we show up for him. And so we were in the front of the line because we got there quite early. And so I walked up to him, and out of context, there's so many people that work at the White House. And so I walked up and I said, Mr. Karl Rove, you may or may not remember me, but I'm Theresa Payton. And then he just took off. He finished the sentence and I said, this is my mom and dad. And so then he puts his arm around my mom and dad and he turns to everybody else in the line and he says, I have one of my colleagues here from the White House, and here's her wonderful parents. And it was really amazing. He's really special.
I can see why you would like somebody like that. That's incredible. So now, question 2. I know you are a dog person. So what kind of a dog do you have?
Yes. So sadly, her brother passed away last year, but I have a Great Pyrenees. We rescued them. There's a Great Pyrenees rescue farm in Western North Carolina. And Charlie, who runs that farm, he is just great at taking in these dogs from all different types of circumstances and then matching them up with families that want to adopt the breed. So her name's Princess Leia.
Oh,
yeah, her brother King Seamus passed away last year. The kids renamed the dogs. And she is just wonderful. I mean, she's fiercely loyal. She's pretty chill and pretty quiet, unless you are a delivery truck. And then you better get out of the neighborhood.
that sounds like our dog. We have a rescue from the streets of Moscow, actually. And he's just a mutt. His name is Shaggy. And he is a very calm, sweet, chill dog unless UPS shows up. Then he just loses his mind. Okay, question 3. All of the IT computer people that I know are very into technology, but that also seems to go hand in hand with being a gamer. Is that true for you?
Interestingly enough, no, but I live in a household of gamers. So it's funny. I did play games, but I think I just kind of did this. I'm with computers all day, thinking about it all day, and I'm such a outdoors person. And so when I can unplug, my way of relaxing is I have to get out and I have to, even if it's raining, I have to hear the sounds of nature. I have to feel it, smell it, touch it, be in it. So I think that just sort of took me away from being any good at playing video games. But Once in a while I'll play with the kids and it'll make them laugh hysterically. But my husband loves to play. My three kids love to play. As a matter of fact, my two sons who are in college are on the college esports team,
Oh, wow.
in addition to their physical sports that they play. And I love that colleges do that now because it's a great way to have camaraderie, competition, strategy, and, kind of channel video game playing. And it's so fun to see socially. For example, like when everything was shut down during the pandemic, my kids would get on like a Zoom with their friends while playing video games with their friends so that they could at least still be together and see each other and socially interact, even if they couldn't be together.
Oh, yeah. I understand that since I'm actually a Kansas girl living in Germany, a lot of times my friends and I will hook up playing Fortnite.
I love that. Fortnite's fun. I definitely go watch my kids when they're playing Fortnite. It's fun to watch.
That's my really bad addiction. I need to quit that.
You know what, though? It's social and it's a great way to stay in touch with people all around the world.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about that. You can do squads and you can have your friends. You can sit there and chat and play the game at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Build things. I mean, it's fun. And my kids actually kept an old version of a game system so they could do Little Big Planet, which is, that's such a cute game. Uh, and then the boys play Rocket League on the esports team.
That sounds like fun. I need to check some more out.
Yeah. So if you're a big soccer fan, Rocket League is basically playing 3v3 soccer with sports cars.
Oh, yeah. One of my first jobs ever, I actually worked for a professional soccer team in the United States. And my husband is a huge football fan here in Europe. So we were always going to games and watching games, and it's a big part of the house.
Oh, that's awesome.
Since you are an outdoor person, what is your favorite thing to do whenever you're outside? Do you like to go camping, fishing, or just hike?
Yes, hiking, and more hiking. Yes, my family, they're not as big on the camping and fishing. I love it. Growing up, that's my dad. We would go camping, fishing, hiking, deep sea fishing, creek fishing, lake fishing.
Yeah.
I love it, but my family's not as into that. But oh, we love a good hike. And we're very blessed living in North Carolina. There are hiking trails everywhere. And so if you want to hike in the mountains, you can do that. You can hike around the beaches. You can hike in the Piedmont area. It's really wonderful, the dedication to hiking trails and, just a great way to see things and be together and just enjoy.
Question 5. You have been the first female CIO in the White House. You've been on a television show. You've written a book. What are you bad at?
So I am really bad at overcommitting. And then I have this fear of letting people down. So it ends up sometimes getting into like close to burnout mode. I would say as well, I want to see positive change. And so I'm bad at being patient. So that is actually something I've been working a lot on, mindfulness and patience and not forcing change, but being a force for change.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, during the pandemic, I decided, I've always wanted to learn Reiki and become a Reiki master. And I reached out to my aunt. She is a Tai Chi master and she is a Reiki master as well. But I reached out to her and she said, well, here's somebody that I know teaches lessons. And one of the things I talked to her, because she said, why do you want to learn Reiki? And she said, do you want to have your own practice? And I said, well, I'd like to be able to do it for myself and my family. But really, I want to learn more mindfulness and peace about things that are not changing for good fast enough. So I've spent a lot of time working on that. But I would say, yeah, the patience thing is definitely something that I need to continue to improve on.
I'm laughing because this is a conversation that my husband and I have had. I always tell him I don't have to have patience because he's my patience. He has the patience for me because I have none.
Love it.
This has been absolutely amazing. I could talk to you all day long, but I know you've got things to do. So let's just remind everybody what your book is and where they can find you.
Sure, absolutely. Manipulated inside the cyberwar to hijack elections and distort the truth. But it's not just about politics, it's about all social issues. And you can find the book in paperback on Amazon, but you can also find it your favorite online bookstores. If you do want an autographed and or personalized copy, there's a Park Road Books in Charlotte that is an independent and family-run bookstore. They ship globally. And so if you're a big fan of independent bookstores like I am, you can reach out to Park Road Books and they will help you. They'll call me, I'll come in, personalized sign, whatever you need. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on what's now referred to as X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle there is Tracker Payton. And you can find me on Instagram. We have a Fortalice Solutions account. And I think that's about it. And I just opened up an account on TikTok.
And as always, all of your information is going to be in the description of today's podcast. And I will be sure to add in the URL for the AI deepfake scanner check that you mentioned and for the independent bookstore so people can get autographed books.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dianne. My time with you flew by. And I hope we get to have a conversation again soon. Thanks for all you're doing for authors.
Oh, I am so glad. Whenever your publicist contacted me about this, I'm like, yes, 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 please bring her. I would love to talk to her. Absolutely. So anytime that you ever have anything that you want the public to know about, updates to your book, new books, whatever, you are welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Dianne. I'll look forward to it.
So there you have it, folks. What an incredible conversation. I wish I could have talked to her for hours because she just is such an incredible wealth of information on these topics. And it was just such a fantastic opportunity. I hope you enjoyed every minute of it as much as I did. Now, don't forget, you can find all of her links in today's podcast description. And if you want to pick up a copy of her book, Manipulated, I suggest you go to Park Road Books, support an independent bookseller, and get an autographed copy for yourself. It's a win for everybody. So that's it for today, folks. Don't forget to check out our TikTok video in the blog for today's podcast on our website, burkhartbooks.com, because we finally tell you what has been going on behind the scenes for Book Banter Magazine and the big news that we had for what's going on going forward from now on with our magazine. It is so cool. I am so happy. It's going to be fantastic for us and for every single author who appears in the magazine, because now they're going to get in front of a much larger audience. So be sure to go to burkhartbooks.com and check out today's blog post. You can find our favorite dad jokes about the topic that we talked about today, plus all the information on Theresa Payton and Fortalice and her book, Manipulated. Inside the Cyberwar to hijack elections and distort the truth. So now, you know what time it is, folks. It's time for all of you to go forth and be really happy.